me. My name is Miss Lizzie. I don't ever smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some disease. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to rhyme. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome, guys. That's right. Miss Liz is back, and we have an incredible tea time today. Today is a golden heart tea, and you know what Miss Liz said. There will be many surprises this year going on tea time. Today, we're going to be talking motherhood. And, of course, I'm a mom, so I thought it was an incredible way to bring in motherhood. But we have an incredible guest in the back studio, Cheri Bergeron, who's going to be sharing her journey to motherhood after 40. But before we get started, we're going to get you guys all over to Miss Liz's YouTube channel, and we're going to get you to subscribe to that. If you're on Spotify, check out Miss Liz's Teatimes and give that a follow as well. All of these tea times, if they resonate with anyone, I appreciate if you could share them with a friend, a coworker, a family member, a sibling, all of that good stuff, because that's what tea time is all about. It's spilling and making a mess and making a difference, sharing these cups of teas. I guarantee there's one tea time that will resonate with all of you guys. So before we get started, we're going to do the good disclaimer, and then I'm going to do an incredible introduction to my golden heart today. And then we're going to spill some tea together, and we're going to make a difference on motherhood. So the disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicated to sharing real life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. I, Miss Liz, is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith and health. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own judgment when considering any action or decisions that may relate to the discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotional triggering subjects. Listeners and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me at my email, bookingmissliz@gmail.com, or visit my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Times. By choosing to participate in comments on or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. Miss Liz welcomes you to join the discussion with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect those wishes and your decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Now, incredible introduction coming your way for my guest today. The theme today is Unstoppable Motherhood, Defying the Odds After 40. Today on Tea Time with Miss Liz, we welcome a woman who embodies resilience, courage, and the power to defy the odds. Cheri Bergeron was told at 40 years old that her chances of becoming a mother were next to impossible. For 6 years, she faced heartbreaking setbacks, crushing statistics, and the silence of infertility. Yet she refused to give up. Through determination, faith, and an altered path, she created the family of her dreams, a journey that not only gave her 2 beautiful children, but also a mission to help women everywhere discovered that their story isn't over no matter their age or circumstance. Cheri is the founder of Cheri's Choice, a nonprofit guiding women through altered path to motherhood. She is also the author of Mission Motherhood, where she shares her unfiltered journey through fertility challenges, IFV loss, and ultimately triumphed. Beyond her personal story, she has become an advocate, a trained life coach, a public speaker, and a voice for women navigating fertility later in life. Her impact extended beyond motherhood. Cheri won a landmark Texas custody case that challenged outdated laws around assisted reproduction, a victory that speaks to her fierce spirit and determination to rewrite not only her story, but the stories of countless women who follow. From her home in Austin, Texas, she now inspires women worldwide to reject limiting fairy tales, embrace their truth, and boldly create families and futures they deserve. So please join me in welcoming a true golden heart guest to Tea Time, Cheri Bergeron. Let me get Cheri in here and let's spill some tea together. Welcome, Cheri.
That was an amazing, so Golden Heart, that was an amazing introduction. Thank you so much.
There we go. We got you.
That was an amazing introduction. Thank you so much. And I'm going to give the heart right back at you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. You know, it's these golden hearts that really are going to make a difference on Tea Time, you know, and you were a blessing. You found me, and I think your story is incredible. So let's get into your story a little bit, Cheri. Let's take you back to, I'm going to take you way back before we even started motherhood. So who was Cheri as a little girl, and who's Cheri now?
Well, I would say that as a little girl, I was somebody who had a great childhood in a lot of ways, but I think I was seeking belonging and I was seeking acceptance from the men in my life. So particularly my father and my brother. And that really was a challenge because ultimately they had very different views of what it meant to be a young woman in this world, a girl in this world, and they were some fairly antiquated views. So to be an outspoken woman wasn't necessarily a good thing. To be someone who sort of wore red and was bold, wasn't demure and soft. These weren't good things. When I started to get the attention of boys, that in particular was not a good thing. And so I found that with where my father and my brother were concerned, there was a lot of butting heads, and that really set me up for a lot of my future.
Yeah. And the reason that I wanted to take you back to the little girl, right, is because all of us as little girls, you know, men come into our lives and sometimes, you know, they kind of give us a bunch of hiccups. So I wanted to get into the hiccups of how Cheri got to this point where she became a mother on her own, because your story is truly incredible. And I want to get that out there for mothers who think they can't do it on their own, right?
Well, and I have to say, I didn't do it on my own. I had a tremendous amount of help. And I think that's one of the things as women, when it comes to fertility, we feel a lot of shame and we don't ask for help. But I think that that is one of the key things, actually, is accepting help and understanding what your options are. And so that's so much what the work that I do now is all about. But, you know, I started with two dreams. I knew that because of feminism, I could be anything that I wanted to be in this world. I could be a CEO, I could be president, I could be anything. And at the same time, I was from a traditional household, and I believed the fairy tale of family, and that I would meet someone, we would get married, and then children would come. And this would all just happen in kind of nature's way. And so these were my two my two lessons, my two dreams that I carried into adulthood. And it just didn't quite happen that way to me. I started into my career and I had a lot of success, and I started dating and frankly started kissing a lot of frogs. And the one question that would typically blow up the relationship would be, can I see myself having children with this person? That was always one of the big questions. And so often, even I did even get married and experience divorce because could I see myself having children with this person? That was such a final step to me. And so when I ended up in my 30s, I was feeling very desperate. And I got married to what I like to call Prince Convenient, and started down the journey. And it's like, okay, cue up the babies now. Let's go. And crickets. There were crickets at 37. There were crickets at 38. There were crickets at 39. And so at 40, I went to seek the help of a fertility doctor.
So how did that journey change your life, Cheri, by going there?
Well, it was rocky. I'll tell you that they showed me a chart that I share in my book that kind of shook me to my core. And the reality was that my fertility had started declining about 10 years earlier. And by your mid-30s, it's not this nice, gentle slope. It falls off a freaking cliff. Absolute nosedive sort of situation. And by the time I was sitting there at age 40, my odds of getting pregnant hovered right around 10%. And I was shocked by that. I had grown up and gone through my early adult life believing that people had kids in their 40s, some even in their 50s. We saw all the celebrity stories, and I believed that. I thought, okay, well, I might need some help from medical science, but this isn't going to be that big a deal. Turns out it was a really big deal.
So Cheri, you have a couple questions that came in, and I want to get them out throughout this hour together. I want to start with number one. Cheri, can you take us back to the moment at 40 when you were told motherhood might not be possible? What was going through your heart and mind?
That was a devastating moment. And I have to tell you that I felt really angry at myself. I thought, how could I let this happen? How could I be so stupid? Like, I think I'm a very intelligent person. How could I have missed this? And this lesson could cost me everything. And the second thing that came to my mind was, what the heck has feminism been telling me all of this time? It said, go be everything that you can be. Go pursue your career. It'll be there, no problem. Don't worry, honey. And sitting there hearing how unforgiving biology was made me feel deceived, actually. So it was sort of these two dynamics of angry at society for this lie that I felt that I had received, and angry at myself for not seeking more information sooner and kind of having a blind faith that it would all work out.
We have a question that just came in, Cheri. As a feminine, we're told right from a young age that we're going to have babies, right? So when you grow up and you're unable to have babies without help, how did, like, the self-blame you just shared, but how did that feel, like, knowing that, you know, what we're told as little girls can't always happen to every single woman out there?
Right. Well, infertility strikes right at the core of how we define ourselves as women, right? The ability to conceive, carry, and deliver a child. And so that really is devastating to a woman's self-worth. I have to say that from childhood, I didn't necessarily know that I wanted to be a mother. I believed in family. I thought I had, I wanted a family, I thought, but then I started to pursue my career and I was like, whoa, this is fun. This is great. Financial independence and, being able to live on my own terms, exotic travel and all of that. It's pretty heady stuff. But then I started dating some people who had children. And that's where it really started to hit me that, wow, I do think that I want children. And so going through this year after year of trying to become pregnant and having it not happen was such a painful thing. Every Mother's Day, every time I would go to a conference at Disneyland, Disney World, and I would even have to go to these conferences on my birthday. And so I'd be working on my birthday, thinking another year has gone by in the happiest place on earth, feeling absolutely miserable and drowning my sorrows in probably a bottle of Chardonnay. So it was just really a tough thing. And I would say we should all be more sensitive to people who are childless and trying to become pregnant, because those kinds of holidays are so difficult.
Absolutely. We have a question here. 6 years of fertility treatment is a long and painful journey. How did you find the strength to keep going when hope felt out of reach?
Yeah, and my whole fertility journey was actually 10 years. I
Oh,
had my children at 44 and a month before my 47th birthday. And so I think the only thing that really got me through is that I'm incredibly stubborn. God made me ridiculously stubborn. And so I had this very profound sense that I needed to become a mother. And if I didn't become a mother, that I really would not be fully happy. And so I had this belief. I also had this other belief that God was going to give me the desires of my heart. And so with those two beliefs, I just said, well, I have to keep going until I figure this out. And I was open to foster parenting. I was open to adoption. It wasn't like I had just one path that I was going to pursue, but I was going to become a mother one way or another. So, and that's how I got through, was just my steadfast focus on that goal and knowing it was my purpose.
I like that stubbornness. Women don't talk about being stubborn, right? We get told we're stubborn by men many times, and even by other women, but we don't speak about stubbornness. And I think stubbornness is it's a good trait to have.
It can be. And I was very, I had a lot of perseverance. And I will tell you, for all of you career women, the fact that you are driven, the fact that you are stubborn, that you have perseverance and resilience, these are the things, the very qualities that will help you become a mother. So don't lose heart about that.
Well, you need all of that, right? Because kids will take you down a path. There is no instruction book for raising kids. Being a mother myself, the journeys that we have to take with our children, right?
Well,
our
I say
stories are never the same.
Yeah, and motherhood is not for wimps. That's what I like to say. It is not for wimps.
I like that. Motherhood is not for wimps, because it is a journey in itself. Cheri, you gave me the color on the word unstoppable for yourself. And that kind of goes into the word of stubbornness, because you need to be stubborn to be unstoppable. Tell us why you gave us that word, unstoppable.
Because I would refuse to take no for an answer. So for me, it wasn't a matter of if I was going to become a mother, it was when and how I was going to become a mother. And that really was somewhat of a recalibration for me, because again, I thought there was one way. When I grew up, I thought there was one way. You meet somebody, you get married, you have kids. Well, it didn't work that way for me. So my fairy tale wasn't going to turn out that way. So I had to write a new one. And that meant exploring all the options that were available to me. And admittedly, I was doing that a little bit late. And so I think women need to have a lot of that information much sooner, before their clock is running out, so that they can really think about their values, their options, and chart a path more intelligently, more well-informed, and more confidently than I did. So, but that's why I was unstoppable. Even though I was in catch-up mode, I was still going to make it happen.
I love the way you express yourself, girl. Another question just came in. What is the clock is timing out phrase stand for?
The clock is running out. Oh, your biological clock, don't you know? So that, there is just that biology doesn't negotiate. And so this idea that our fertility starts declining at 30 and is on a very steep slope until our chances are very limited at age 40, that 10-year slope is what I mean. That's the clock. And a lot of women choose, if they haven't found the right person, they do choose Mr. Convenient. They do settle. And what I have found is that creates almost a worse dynamic, because that might mean divorce. That might mean a toxic relationship. It might mean an unhealthy relationship. And is that really the way that you want to bring children into this world? And is that the kind of relationship that you want to model? I made the decision that wasn't good enough for my kids, and I was going to be a single mother by choice.
Well, and society tells us, right, what motherhood is supposed to look like, right? Husband and wife, in today's world, we have such a diverse and inclusion, right? That there's two mothers, there's two fathers, there's different ways of raising children. And we have to be able to say, you know what, that's the path that we want to choose, whether you like it or not. This is the way we want to raise our kids, right?
That's true. And there's still so many headwinds for people that pursue unconventional paths to motherhood. My own family, some of them weren't supportive. I mean, my mother has been my greatest champion, and actually she lives with me. She's 82 years young and has been there for all of my, for both of my children on a daily basis, which is amazing. But so many times we judge people for the kind of family. And when I was going through that court case, it was asserted that my family was weird or strange or somehow bribed or not enough. And so sometimes we use these values as weapons, and really we should say that love is the only ingredient required for a family.
Absolutely.
I would say, love and maybe commitment to one another. Those are the only two ingredients. And otherwise we ought to just let people live their lives.
Absolutely. Can we talk a little bit about that court case?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
So do you want to share a little bit about what the court case was and the struggles that you had to go through? Because standing up for our rights is a struggle, and you got to be stubborn and you got to have that unstoppable mindset as well. So share a little bit about the case and that for the viewers and listeners who might not know about it.
Sure. So let me just give you a little bit of background. So I had gone through IVF and I had started that process with my then husband. Frankly, we had gone through some loss and some really challenging times in our marriage. So we were kind of hanging on by a thread. By the time that I was actually pregnant, we were no longer together. We were legally separated. And I was at the time carrying twins. So we ended up going through that process. I had a very high-risk pregnancy and ended up delivering my twins, but my son did not survive. He passed after 19 days. So we had, I had my daughter. We had 40 days of prematurity with her, which was very, very difficult. But all along he had said if we weren't together, he didn't want to have anything to do with children, which was really surprising to me that you could know that children were in the world and not have a relationship with them. But his opinion changed. So I was co-parenting with my daughter. And so we were trying to work that out. But that's from the day that she was born. We hadn't been together my whole pregnancy or anything. So we were co-parenting with my daughter. So about a year later, I decided I wanted to have another child. Now we are still legally separated, but technically married. And so I decided that I was going to move forward with an anonymous sperm donor. No problem, did that. And 4 years later, a full 7 years after we had been legally separated, he filed papers to try to become the legal father of my son that I had had on my own.
Wow. God, balls or what? Yeah, Miss Liz said that. I'm a mother, right? So, wow.
So what was landmark about it was that this really questioned laws that are in every state called presumed father laws that say if a child is born during a marriage, then they are the presumed father. But we hadn't been living together for 7 years. We hadn't, he was with someone else. We were living separate lives. We were co-parenting my daughter. And as a byproduct of that, he did spend some time around my son, but he wasn't financial support. He wasn't a part of any major event with my son. He wasn't there when he was born or anything like that. And so what this really challenged was these outdated laws because they were written when families were together. And it wasn't keeping up with the modern reality that sometimes there are reasons people stay married even if they're not together, for health insurance, or for a business that we owned, which was in our case, what happened. And so during that trial, they actually asserted that I didn't have the right to pursue an independent pregnancy because I was still married. So let me translate that for you. They were saying he owned my uterus.
Wow.
I was like, oh no, you don't own my uterus. He's literally in a relationship with someone else. We could talk about what they're doing, but I'm supposed to just be, putting all of my plans on hold. So that was something I had to fight.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Like, they can own the car, they can own the house, but not the uterus.
Exactly. I'm gonna keep rights to that part. Thank you very much. Yeah, exactly.
So how did you change that law?
Well, the laws haven't been changed, but the fact was, so that is part of the work that Cheri's Choice is going to continue. It takes a long time to change laws. It really does. But what I was able to do, it was a landmark case because he had previously filed paperwork saying that he was not the father. And then when my son was born, so that he wouldn't have to pay child support and things like that, because he wanted to protect himself from, not that I was asking, but he wanted to protect himself. And 4 years later, changed his pleading. And no one in the history of Texas has ever done that. That's what made it sort of a precedent-setting situation. So there's still a lot of work to do. And one of the reasons why it's so important to me to talk about this is because these laws still exist, ladies. So if you were still married and decided to have a child on your own with an anonymous sperm donor, think about this. There's nobody in the daddy box. If you're using an anonymous sperm donor, he could try to step in and become the legal father. Wow. So that's what is still at stake for other women.
I've never even heard of this presumed father laws. I'm going to be looking that up because I'm a big nerd when it comes to stuff like this, And this is why I have these tea times, is because there are things out there that we do not know about, that we are not aware of. And thank you, Cheri, for sharing that, because I'm going to be looking that up.
It is crazy because I'll tell you that I allowed him to be around my son on a limited basis while he was visiting my daughter, because I had no concern whatsoever that he would that he could ever try to claim to be the father of my child. He knew he wasn't the biological father. He hadn't been there he wasn't acting in a fatherly role. He had filed legal papers saying that he wasn't the father. Talk about betrayal. That is, to me, the most ultimate form of betrayal, to know how hard I had struggled to become a mother. And then he was trying to take my child and, assert legal parentage over my child. That wasn't going to fly with me. So I fought. It cost me $250,000 to protect him. And I won.
Wow. It's amazing what people will put you through.
And you know what? I am not a victim. I had a part to play in all of this. My recommendation would be get a divorce before you enter into, having children. But the hard thing about that was my clock was ticking, and I knew that I didn't have a lot of time. And so I cut some corners that ended up really taking a toll on me and also on my children. And so, but I own those things. I don't want to make it seem like I'm blameless. I know that I took actions that contributed to some of these issues.
Cheri, I'm so glad that you said that, because I say this all the time, right? A relationship is two people. We have to take accountability for stuff as well.
Absolutely. And I never should have gotten married. The fact is, I should have moved forward, having children on my own, and then allowed love to find me in its own time, which it ultimately did. But I had to never force fit the fairy tale, ladies. Never force fit it. It never works out well.
Well, and that was part of your tea, right? Because I asked you to give me 3 phrases of your tea, and it was your tea. Where am I? I'm over here. I got papers all over. But part of your tea was there's no right path to motherhood. There's only your path. Love, let love find you in your own time. Because society tells us we need to be loved by this age. We need to have a family by this age. We need to, be married for this long. Society tells us to do so many different things, but it doesn't live our lives. It just tells us what to do, right? Just to program us. And your top one that you gave me, if glass slippers doesn't fit, screw the fairy tale, become a mother on your own terms. I love that you put it out there blank, right? There is no fairy tale. Life is not fairy tale. That's for the movies. That's for the editing team. That's for all of that stuff. But let's be real. Life is hard. And, but what I really like about your story, Cheri, is that you're straightforward, you're blunt, and you have a way of coming out and making people see that there are still changes to be made. There are still things that need to be done, and you took accountability. A lot of us, we blame the partner, we blame the spouse, we blame our children for things not working out in our lives, but we're part of those relationships as well. And we have to say, you know what? We were part of this. We had our part in it as well. And we need more people that are standing up and saying, you know what? It took two of us. Like, I made some bumps too in the road.
Yeah. And you know what? I actually am very grateful that that happened. It was insane at the time and it was tremendously painful. But I'll tell you what, he gave me my mission, because I remember the time so vividly. I had just found out that he was suing me to become the legal father, and my world was just crumbling. I was like, how is this happening? He knew he wasn't the father, all of these things. And I cried out to God and I said, why is this happening to me? After everything that I have been through, after all of the struggle, after losing a child, after all, 40 days in the NICU with my daughter, after all of these things, why is this happening to me? And I got this incredible peace that came over me, Liz. And I said, and what I heard was, you're going through this so that you can help other women become mothers. And that moment really changed things for me. It gave my pain a purpose. And so I have to thank him for giving me this purpose, because I know that I have the opportunity to help a lot of other women have the families of their dreams. And what better gift is there than that? So,
Absolutely.
So I'm thankful.
Cheri, and that's what it's all about, right? Is our missions, our purposes come from our pain. Had that not happened, you would not have Cheri's choice.
Right.
For other women out there, you would not bring awareness to the fathers, the presumed fathers laws. Like, we would not be having this conversation had you not gone through that situation. And this is what I say all the time to all my listeners out there and everyone that follows Miss Liz, is our pain is our purpose. It becomes our mission in life. It becomes our story. So if we're ashamed of it, or we try to hide it, or we try to change it, are we really being true to ourselves?
That's true. And if we keep it inside, then we don't have the ability to help others through those learnings. And I think that is a big part of why we're here. So, for those who are listening, don't shy away from the pain. None of us want to experience that pain. But like you said, healing comes through trauma and the self-awareness that comes from those experiences. And I agree with that wholeheartedly.
So Cheri, tell us about Cheri's choice, on how we can follow you, how we can know more about it, and how, as a woman, we can support you.
Oh, gosh. Well, I guess Cheri's Choice, it just is a new nonprofit that I started. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is helping women find out their options earlier. And so I am very excited about going out to universities. I know school has just started back. And so I really want to speak with young people, women in their, 18 and into their 20s, about fertility, because there is no fertility 101. We have sex ed for young children and we give it to them before they need it, right? Here's the information. Here's how you make a baby. Nobody talks about what your fertility is like. In fact, what do we tell women who are post puberty, don't get pregnant. We said, don't get pregnant until you're ready. And so we socialize them, we condition them to say that, and then we expect some switch to get flipped. But really, we spend a lot of time thinking about not getting pregnant. So we need to understand what our fertility is all about. And so that's really a big part of Cheri's choice. So that's really what I plan to do. If there are those of you who are involved in universities and, would love for me to come and speak, I'd love to hear from you, because I really feel like knowledge in those early years is power. And we need to equip our women, not just with the female empowerment is not just you can do whatever you want in your career. It's you can also have the family that you want, and you need to have information to navigate that properly.
I like that you brought that up, because we do teach sex ed, right? And you're in the States and I'm in Canada, but we don't talk about fertility to our children. We don't even bring that up in the school topics. Maybe that is something that needs to become in part of the curriculum, right? For people to come in, for counselors and nurses and stuff to come in and start talking about this, so that when women can't have babies or struggle to have a child, they are aware of sources out there. So how did you find out about the resources out there, Cheri?
I mean, the resources are overwhelming, and that's another reason why I started Cheri's Choice, to provide counseling for women so that you can kind of get a sense of this. It's overwhelming when you think of surrogacy and egg donors and sperm donors and all the testing involved with IVF and things like that. So my organization really seeks to distill some of that education for women and also provide community support so that we can support one another, because infertility is so isolating. It is shameful. People feel shame about it. There's so much disappointment and heartbreak, and we try to keep it inside. And so really bringing a community of women together is so important, so that we don't feel alone in this struggle.
We have a question that just came in, Cheri. What is IVF?
IVF is in vitro fertilization. So in vitro fertilization has been around since the late 70s, if you can believe it. And what it is really creating an embryo outside of the womb. So imagine you've got your ingredients, you've got the woman's egg, the man's sperm. They're able to put those together in a laboratory setting, grow them to a 5-day gestation, and then implant that directly into the woman. And sometimes it takes and sometimes it doesn't. It's actually not, some people think, oh, well, IVF is a slam dunk. It's not. It's a chance, but it's not a promise. And so that for women who have biological issues or issues with their, say, fallopian tubes or things like that, where the egg can't, interact with the sperm, things like IVF help make that possible. And I have seen studies to say that at least 20% of the population struggles with infertility. So this is not something that is just, an unusual situation. There's a lot of people, a lot of couples who struggle with infertility. And there's parts that are the woman and there's parts that, may involve the man.
Absolutely. We have a question here that I want to, it aligns with what the IVF is. So that's a good question. Thank you for bringing that up. In your book, Mission Motherhood, you share deeply about IVF, loss, and genetic pregnancies. What was it important for you to tell the raw, unfiltered truth?
At geriatric. So anything over the age of 35, we're considered geriatric pregnancies, which feels really good. When you're 35 years old, I still thought I was pretty young. It doesn't feel young, but it was so important to me to share my journey and do it in a very unfiltered way, kind of like a girlfriend to girlfriend conversation, and to really tell the raw truth of it, because fairy tales aren't getting us anywhere. And to really put the real truth out there helps people be prepared and be armed with making different decisions. I went through so much pain, so much expense, so much heartbreak. If I could spare one woman those experiences because they read my book, oh, that feels incredible. So that's my goal. That's why I had to write it.
So how did you get the title of the book, and how long did it take you to write that book?
Oh my gosh. That was like having a kid in and of itself. I said,
Writing a book is a kid, right?
oh my gosh, it is. If any of you have tried to write a book, it's not easy. I mission motherhood because it was kind of off of Mission Impossible, because at 40 it was kind of impossible. Certainly at 44 and almost 47, kind of impossible. But that was really where I came from. And also it was this drive that, I say failure wasn't an option. And I'm not meaning to say if you struggle with infertility that you're failing. I'm not saying that, but it's more that militaristic kind of commitment. Like, I'm going to do this come heck or high water, I'm going to make this happen. So it was sort of that dogged determination of a soldier that I was invoking a little bit with that theme. And in terms of writing a book, I wrote it all myself, and then I wanted to improve it. And so I did start working with a ghostwriter who helped me weave in details and make it more of an intimate conversation kind of from the facts that I had. And I'm really glad that I did that. In fact, I'll show you the book. Here's the book.
I love the cover. So how did you get the cover of that book?
Well, the idea was, rabbits are about fertility. And so that's why we use the rabbit. And really, we went through a lot of scars. And so that's why the patchwork heart and all the pain that we went through. But it really is a journey of love. And so that's why we use the heart. And then the tiara was about the fairy tale, and kind of, got a fairy tale that didn't work out just exactly textbook. But, we can write our own fairy tales. That's the point. I still believe fairy tales exist. I think they just don't fit. They're just not one size fits all. So, we just have to write a fairy tale that works for us. And that's the magic of what I'm working through now.
Well, it's like that glass slipper, right, from Cinderella, right? We don't even know what size that glass slipper was.
Right. And most of those things hurt your feet anyway. So, actually I have bunny slippers. That's why on the cover of my book, I'm actually wearing one high heel and one bunny slipper, because the bunny slippers are way more comfortable, ladies, So yes, the glass slipper might look good, but the practicality is that motherhood requires bunny slippers.
And this is why I chose you to be my golden heart, was because of the heart on the cover, the heart of motherhood. We don't speak about motherhood in today's society. We just say, oh, you're a mom. Oh, that's nice to know, but, a little appreciation goes a long way, and that's why when you found me, I was like, absolutely, this has got to be my golden heart moment. We have another question that came in here for women who may be listening right now and feeling like it's too late. What message would you want to speak directly to their hearts?
Oh my gosh. This is where I might start crying, because
that's okay. We're allowed tears on Teatime.
Yeah. Okay, good. There is hope. As long as you feel the passion and the purpose to become a mother, there is a path for you. And it will likely not look the way that you imagined. But there are so many avenues to become a mother. I was a foster parent for a time, and I had a lovely little girl, a 1-year-old girl who was with me for 7 months. That didn't work out for me, but I'll tell you that my experience fueled the learnings of a friend who then became a parent, a foster parent, and they were able to adopt 3 girls who they became their family. So it doesn't always look the way that we imagine, but I think if you're open and you say, I'm here to find the children that I was meant to have versus some rigid formula, then I believe that love will find you. And so my recommendation is don't settle. You're going to make a bigger mess if you do that. Really look at your options and what your priorities are. And if you want to become a mother, you absolutely can. And I would love to support you in that journey. So, feel free to reach out, but there is hope, and I believe in you.
I like that. Don't give up hope. The journey's never over. We just got to find a solution, right?
And you know, what was amazing is I was just sure if we have time.
Oh, yes, we have time. Absolutely. Even
Well,
if we don't have time, this is my show.
Oh, there you go. Well, all right. So when I was pregnant with the twins, I was living next door to these people who had just moved in, and we didn't even know them, but because we ended up in the NICU and all this crazy stuff. And for those who don't know, that's the neonatal ICU unit if you have a premature child. So we became kind of thrust into each other's lives through that. And it turns out that the people next door had been married for about 50 years, but they had never had children. He didn't want children. She thought that he would change his mind, and he never did. And so she had this hole in her heart because she had never been able to experience motherhood. But we got thrust into each other's lives, and she was there on the day that I brought my daughter home after 40 days in the NICU. And when she held my daughter, you could just see the love on her face, the joy on her face. And she ended up becoming the godparent to my children and spent almost every day with them. And she got to be a grandmother, essentially. And they loved her so deeply, and she had such a wonderful relationship with them until she passed just about a year ago. And so she got to experience something very akin to motherhood very late in life. So, you know, if it's even somewhat a child or a young person whose life you can impact, you can experience some of those joys of motherhood.
Cheri, you know, the world, it's a round circle, right? And we meet people for a reason. And, you know, people come into our lives and we're like, well, why this person, right? Why this journey? And that woman got to be a grandma, you know? She probably never thought she would be. And she got to enjoy that moment. So
That's absolutely right.
you know, life shows us different ways of bringing people into our lives and different journeys and different ways of walking.
And I like to say that with love, anything is possible.
Right? And that's like a fairy tale, right? The fairy tale is you never know how it's going to end.
That's so true. That's so true. Some of the twists and turns I never would have predicted.
Right. And I think that's how Disney makes a lot of good fairy tales. You know, they just keep us on our toes until the end. We never know how the story's going to end.
So true.
So, Cheri, how can we change the generation of motherhood in the future?
I think through these things that we just talked about, giving information much earlier, and then being open to the fact that there are many different acceptable paths to motherhood. Let's not narrow things down so much that women feel trapped and that you make bad choices. Let's open it up and let love guide us to form the families that we were meant to have. So I think those ways are how we redefine the path to motherhood and what it means to be a mother.
Absolutely. Well, now I'm going to switch it up a little bit, Cheri.
Oh, all right.
So I asked you your favorite color, and you gave me red. And as you can see, I'm wearing red. I do that in honor of my guest.
Nice.
I wear your favorite colors. Why red?
Well, red is to me, the color of love. It's also the color of pain and blood and suffering. So I really felt, and it's also a very bold color. So to me, that color sort of symbolizes all the things that happened to me with motherhood in terms of being kind of an unconventional woman and a feminist who was, you know, charting my path and then being on this journey of love that had a lot of pain and suffering to it, but really had the beauty of love in the end. And so to me, red is the embodiment of that. Today I'm wearing pink. So that's one of my other colors. I kind of go with that Barbie pink. If you guys haven't seen that Barbie movie, it's awesome. And pink being the female empowerment color. So that's what I'm wearing today.
Absolutely. Well, and you have red on the cover. You got the red heart on your book, and I see some red artwork. Is that from one of your children?
Yeah. So my daughter is, thank you for noticing. My daughter is almost 13 years old and she's an incredible artist. So this is another thing for those of you who go through the NICU and premature infants. We were terrified for years about what was going to happen with her because she had so many things wrong with her when she was an infant. And she is a thriving 12-year-old, incredibly artistic. She's done all this artwork that's on my wall. And she is actually almost a grade ahead in terms of her learning. So, you know, prematurity can be very scary, but she has grown into an incredibly young lady.
I loved it. And I love the artwork in the back. I was just like, what? I'm trying to figure it out. I see flowers and then I see
There's a giraffe over here.
That's a giraffe. Okay. Yeah. Because you're
Yep.
so tiny, right? In that little box. And I'm just like, oh, that's cool. Have you ever thought about turning any of that artwork into like a little teddy bear or anything like that?
Oh, I mean, there would be a lot of things I'd love to do. You're only seeing a part. My whole office is just splattered with stuff like that. You know, I'm not into designer stuff. I'm into having my kids' stuff all around me. So like like so many moms, really, we just want the stuff our kids have made for us to be surrounding us.
Right. So Cheri, on a personal note, do your children know their stories?
Yeah. So, well, when the legal case happened, it kind of thrust my son into the middle of it, as you can imagine, because I actually had to surrender visitation of him for 6 months while this was being litigated. So he had never gone with my estranged husband before, and I had to send him on visits, even on Thanksgiving and things like that. That was just heart-wrenching for me. And this big issue came up, like, well, who's his father? And that was so unfair for my son because maybe that wasn't his story, but my ex made it part of his story. And if there's one thing I'm angry about, it's that he did that to my son, because he deserved to own his own story and not be told that he was lacking anything or missing anything, because there was nothing missing in his life. So, that he became aware of that at a very young age. My daughter's was a different story. She, of course, knew who her father was, but she didn't. This whole concept of an egg donor is a little bit abstract for a child to realize. So, but what we have talked about openly is that I went through a fertility process and that a doctor helped me have you. And then as they got older, I've described that someone helped me with the ingredients. And that's really the way that we've talked about it, because I've shown them the charts and said, look, it can be really risky to have a child if the ingredients aren't good or if they're damaged in some way. And because their brother died of a genetic disease, like, this is a great reason. I mean, it's not a happy reason, but it is a very powerful story to illustrate to them why I made the decision I did not to try to use my own eggs. And I think it was the first selfless thing that I did as a mother, to forego my own genetics in order to make sure that I had a healthy child. That was, I think, my first selfless act of many that we have as mothers, right? We're always being selfless, but that was my first selfless act. So yeah, they know their story, and the more transparent you can be, the more open that you can be while being age appropriate, I think is what professionals recommend.
And I think it's really important to be transparent with our children, not that they hear it from somebody else and then they're like, well, Mom, you didn't tell me that. And,
And yeah, so much so. And one of the reasons behind that is, if you're not keeping any secrets, there's no need for secrecy, because there's no shame. I'm proud that I was able to create my children. So there's nothing to try to keep from them. Sometimes we tell ourselves, well, maybe I'll be less of a mother, or maybe they'll want to know who that person is, or things like that. But that's fear talking. If we lead from love and we have built that bond with our child, then we don't have to hold on to that. We don't have to be fearful of that. We can let go, and we can give our children the full information. The worst thing we can do as parents is to lie to our children or conceal information from our children. If we are open, it'll all work out.
I 100% agree with that. Being transparent as a parent, that is being a number one parent to your child. Because I'm the same way. I would not want my child to find out something and then have them come back and say, you know what, Mom, why could you not tell me?
Right. I agree.
So Cheri, what was one moment in your life where you were like, this is going to get done and I know I'm going to find a way? When was that moment? Like, was it in the middle of the night? Was it like you woke up and you're just like, today's the day and that's it and it's going to happen?
In my journey of fertility, I think it was really when I was going through certain things for my in my marriage, and I figured out that we really weren't aligned. And because I had been divorced before, I was like, I don't want to get divorced, but I want to become a parent. So the very moment was actually when he asked to sign paperwork saying that if we didn't stay married, he didn't want to have anything to do with the child. That was the moment for me that whether we were together or not together, I was going to become a mother. And I pretty much knew at that point I was going to be doing it without him, because that was sort of the non-negotiable for me.
Well, it's kind of like a blackmail, right? You stay with me or I'm not doing this. And
well, I think it was actually more that he was willing to know that he had children in the world and not have anything to do with them. That was a core value. I didn't think we valued parenthood the same way. I couldn't imagine doing that. And the fact that that was what he was asking for was for me a non-negotiable. And so that was kind of the end.
I like that, core values. We really got to bring those to the table. And when we get into a relationship, I think those are conversations we should have, instead of just asking us what our favorite food is, maybe actually have those deep conversations of how do you feel about parenthood? Do you want children? Not that you put 5 years into a relationship and then find out that person never wanted a child.
Well, you're right. But the struggle is that people don't reveal these things. It takes time. And that's one of the things that we as women, if we are being ruled by our clock, we are actually sabotaging those relationships and kind of forcing them. We're trying to figure out, hey, within the next month, can we figure out whether we're a good fit here? Because I got a pressure of time here.
Well, the clock is ticking.
We would be way better off just letting the relationship unfold, because of course he told me he wanted children. So they're going to say the right things. But the fact is, it's only through lived experience and seeing the things that happen that you can really know what a person's values are. And so we're better off letting those permanent partnerships kind of play out over time. We were together for 10 months before we got married. To me, that's not long enough. It wasn't long enough for him to show his true character. And then you're in it. And then what do you do? So don't settle, and take your time and let love find you in its own, in its own time would be my recommendation.
Well, that's because he knows frogs, right? To find Prince Charming.
If you don't try to force it, then these things will unfold naturally and you'll be able to find a good partner for yourself, the kind of partner that you deserve. Don't settle for less.
So Cheri, your final words to everyone who's listening tonight and who will listen to the program later on. What message do you have for them and how can they find you?
My message is thank you. Thank you for taking your time to listen to this story. I hope there's been something you've been able to take away from it. I know my story isn't typical, but I hope that you heard that it's grounded in love and, trying to make a difference in this world. If you want to learn more about the book, I have an author site that's cheribergeron.com. If you want to learn more about the nonprofit, it's cherischoice.com. And I'm available and on all the socials, LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and all that good stuff. So there are ways to find me, and I hope you will.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for being the golden heart today for Teatime. I'm just going to say just going to say a little closing statement here, and then Miss Liz will be back at 7 p.m. with a second tea time of today, and we'll take you down another rabbit hole with some good information that you may not know about. As we close today on Tea Time, I want to honor the courage, honesty, and golden heart of our guest, Cheri Bergeron. Her story reminds us that no statistics, no timeline, and no closed doors can define the fullness of our dreams. Cheri's journey proves that motherhood and life itself can be redefined with resilience, love, and a willingness to walk a different path. She is not only a mother who beats the odds, but a change maker who now helps women everywhere discover that their story is far from over. To everyone listening, whatever chapter you are in, hold on to hope. Your path may look different, but as Cheri has shown us today, different can still lead to miracles. Cheri, thank you for pouring your truth and your strength into Tea Time with me today on Tea Time with Miss Liz. You are a true example of unstoppable motherhood and a beacon of women who are still searching for their yes. So thank you.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
And thank you guys for tuning in with Miss Liz's Tea Time. And I will see you back at 7 p.m. with a new tea that will serve one heart, one tea, and one difference at a time.